This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
Hello and you're welcome to Business Highlights on Trust TV. On Business Highlights, we take a holistic look at business developments and economic policy implementations and how they affect the average Nigerian out there. My name is Chamun Dabeng and I'll be your host. Let's talk numbers. Now, the Central Bank Governor Godwin Emefiele back in October 26, 2022, revealed that there would be a new design for the 1,500, 200 Naira notes. The Apex Bank released the redesigned notes to the public on the 15th of December, 2022. Following 3 extensions, the deadline finally came on February 10th, 2023. The Naira redesign policy has garnered mixed reactions from the public, with some praising the CBN for its push towards a cashless society, and others expressing outrage due to the Naira scarcity that came as a result of the policy. Now, today on the show, we will be discussing the effects the 3-month-old policy has had so far on the Nigerian economy right after the break.
That's great.
You're welcome back to Business Highlights on Trust TV, and once again, my name is Chamun Dabeng. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria had earlier stated that 400 billion naira has been injected into the country. However, with a population of over 200 million, that amount has obviously not been able to serve Nigeria's population. As a result of the Naira scarcity, Nigerians have turned to other means to carry out their transactions. Since the implementation of the Naira redesign policy, POS transactions have increased by 40.69%, moving from 573.72 billion naira in January 2022 to 807.16 billion naira in January 2023, while e-payments are up 45.52%, climbing from 26.65 trillion naira in January 2022 to 38.77 trillion naira in 2023. Naturally, the switch to a cashless society would be beneficial to any nation. However, Nigerians are having trouble with this transition, and here's why. Let's take a look at this report.
As the Naira scarcity persists, traders and customers have been forced to resort to POS transactions between buyers and sellers. However, cases of failed online transactions that are caused by traffic and ineffective internet services have made customers reluctant to use e-transfers as a payment option. Though many lauded the cashless policy targets of the Apex Bank, the infrastructure placed to make this possible has been questionable.
One of the customers that came to the shop this morning, I am the one that gave him 100 naira to pay for the space where he parked his car. And later he did not buy the goods again because he was trying to make the transaction and it was not going. The one I saw there before yesterday, the one I saw yesterday, even the one that they debited me, and I did not get the money.
I have transferred almost 3 people now that the money did not go. And those people now, if they are customers, they have gone. It will show paid, transaction okay, but money is not in my account. I went to the bank to complain now. They say it's 10 days for me to see my money.
People who do say Gary, say like all this village stuff, they don't listen to you when you talk about transfer. They want to see cash in their hand. You pay, you go.
According to traders in the market, the cashless policy has affected their daily patronage and by implication, their income.
Look at the market now. You cannot see people in the market. Everywhere is just door. People are not entering the market. There's no cash. No cash in the market. No cash to enter market. Somebody buys something, the person cannot go with what he or she has bought. Because without us getting the transfer, we cannot release our goods.
POS will collect 300, 400, 200 for just 1,000 naira. Some of the POS. So how much are we making in a day? Our business is not even moving.
To even withdraw and deposit sometimes is very, very difficult. The network is bad. Most of the bank, you tried more than 3 times, they will debit the person. There's no way you can even, and for them to even get access to the bank, again, at least there's another problem there again.
Though the Supreme Court has ruled that the old 1,000, 500 and 200 Naira notes will remain legal tender till December 31st, 2023. Nigerians are yet to get any form of relief as they await the go-ahead from the Central Bank and President Buhari for the full implementation of the Supreme Court's directive.
Joining me in the studio today to take a look at the situation is policy analyst Faiz Mohammed Ali and financial analyst Oji Adoga. You're both welcome to the show. Now, you've heard Nigerians right from, the mouths of our people. What do you make of the situation? I'm coming to you first, Faiz. As a policy analyst yourself, what do you make of this situation? Have you noticed any pros and cons that have come with the policy?
The concomitant effect of the NAIRA redesign policy, which has really morphed into an exercise in monetary policy gone wrong, and all the ways in which the CBN, I think, can learn from the mistakes that have been made. Chief among those mistakes was underestimating just how ready the financial infrastructure of Nigeria was to move into a cashless society. I think the concomitant effects of this policy have led into increased pressure on the banking system. They've led to heightened tensions in the social arena, and I think the overall perception from the public is a general distrust in the banking system. I think that's something that the CBN needs to look into very seriously, because what's going to happen now is that when the time comes that people have access to large amounts of cash and they're able to withdraw that cash, they're going to hoard it in anticipation of these sort of situations that we're seeing now, which really defeats the policy of the redesign, defeats the aim, of the redesign policy to start with. The way I see it, the CBN has already taken us down this particular path, and rather than look at the policy and see which ways in which it could be redesigned, right now the only thing that should be done is prepare for a point in which there is better infrastructure across the nation to support the large amount of transactions that are now taking place. I think it was mentioned earlier that the online and e-payment transactions have increased by 40%. I would like to know by what percent the errors have increased as well, simply because while we can point to an increase in online payments, those payments have not come without their own challenges, both for banks and for customers.
All right, I really like the fact that you actually brought up the percentage of increase in errors. That's something that really needs to be checked in, because if you go to the banks now, you see long queues at customer care. You see lots of Nigerians complaining. I mean, we saw the videos come online of Nigerians stripping themselves naked, screaming in the banking halls, all because of these errors that are still yet to be rectified. Some are still yet to be rectified. Some luckily got rectified, but there's still that situation out there. Now, Oji, you exist in the fintech space.
Yep.
Now, what do you make of this?
See, I'll speak to some of the sentiments shared by some of those guys on the street, right? Those guys actually exist in the informal sector, right? They exist, they're not in theory.
Exactly.
They're actually facing these things head on. Now, what is happening is that the microeconomy is suffering, and people who have not had enough time to adjust are having to lose a lot, right? An example is the emergence of sub-black markets for scarce commodities like cash, right? There's a common talk right now about the Naira to Naira exchange rate, and people are actually buying the Naira, right? Now here's what's happening. When the new Naira was released, it is supposed to go to the banks, then the banks to people, then people are supposed to exchange it with old cash. Now, it is expected that these new Naira notes are supposed to come back to the banks, but it is not coming back because there's a premium on it right now. This is what happens when you make something scarce. And you know, it's actually equality, you know, in economics. When something becomes scarce, the value actually goes up. Now, cash is not supposed to be scarce because of its utility, right? So when cash is actually scarce, you may think that, and I said it here before, you may think that people will just go digital, but people may just buy more cash because of the value in holding it. So, and of course, we are also saying that, you know, the CBN is, I would say, a little slow in reacting to this, because the number of failed transactions are astronomical. I mean, you could just go to any social media platform and just check any banking handle and see the complaints. It's 2-3 times more than, you know, usual. So people are actually talking about, you know, the policy having very, you know, good intention, good background, but then again, the implementation it feels a little rushed. It feels like it wasn't thought thoroughly, and you know, we also had, you know, seen reports about, you know, the blame games. You know, the bankers are hoarding the cash, the politicians are doing all of that. Those are things, you know, may or may not have been substantiated. But then again, I think it is the function or the responsibility of the CBN to predict, you know, that these things will
every
happen.
possible outcome.
Yes, market forces will always react when you introduce a new policy. That's just the way it works. Everybody will react to it the different way. Hoarders will hoard, thieves will steal, you know, everybody will play their part. So you have to understand the market you're playing with. And, you know, sadly, we are still in a very, you know, cash-based economy where manufacturers of goods and services rely heavily on cash, and they need time to actually adjust. And you can see what happened with the NIN. It took about 1.5 years for us to actually get to this point where almost everybody has an NIN.
Same situation with BVN.
Exactly.
All right, so we had a conversation with an economist, Stephen Nwachukwu, and he brought up some points. Some of them do align with our guest in the studio, but let's take a look at it.
Based on the information I have, CBN is actually running with the wrong statistics. That's why we are having this scarcity. CBN is running away from the fact that he wants to do a cashless system. He wants to reduce the volume of money in circulation, whereby leaving less than 500 billion naira notes in circulation, and that cannot serve the system as we speak. In fact, the developing situations are now that naira has become a scarce commodity and is now more profitable to hold naira. You can't find Nigerians going to the bank to deposit the old note or even the new note. It has also, you know, inevitably increased the volume of cash required to be in the system. Prior before now, CBN told us that they have about 3.2 trillion in circulation, and 3.2 trillion is serving the system as we speak now. In fact, the available statistics says that over 5 trillion is needed.
All right, that was Stephen Nwachukwu giving us some points there. Now, he made an interesting point. You know, initially we had about 3 trillion around there that was in circulation. And now he's saying that we need up to 5 trillion in order to service the situation, to service the amount of Nigerians that we have right now. Now, do you agree with that point that he's made? Let's start off with you, Oji.
Well, I don't know, because what I actually see from what he's saying is that, you know, people aren't going back to the banks to drop their old money. So it naturally increases the amount of money in circulation, which defeats the purpose of the policy. Because the policy is supposed to mop up cash, right? Regulate cash, track cash, right? And, you know, initially was supposed to curb counterfeiting, right? Yes. Stop people from actually faking money and control, you know, the monetary space. But when people take money and keep it, because it now has value inherently, it means that you're going to have more money in the economy than you can actually collect back. People want to keep it. So I think because of that, either the CBN either now has to print more money, right, or to create more policies to get money back out of the system, which may actually lead us into more problems than we're already facing.
All right, Faiz.
My understanding of the situation actually is that what we're witnessing is what we would consider an artificial cash crunch, in that in terms of pure volume, there does exist enough physical cash to cater to the needs of Nigerians all over the country. However, there seems to be a disagreement on the part of both the federal actors within the executive branch of the federal government and the CBN and the Supreme Courts as to how best this amount of money should be dispersed and when it should be dispersed and how it should be dispersed to the general public. What that means is really they're creating the situation that they were trying to avoid in the first place. Ostensibly, when the NAIRA redesign policy was first introduced, as was earlier mentioned, the idea was it was supposed to stop counterfeiting. It was supposed to reduce the amount of criminal activity and the amount of money that was outside the financial system and bring it into the banking system. But interestingly enough, I've always found that argument to be questionable because the money that is outside the financial system is chiefly money that is illegal, money that is unaccounted for, money that that goes through different forms of corruption, but money that exists within the informal sector or the formal sector inevitably makes it back into the financial system. So I don't think we have a problem in terms of pure volume. What we have is a problem of dissemination. What we have is a problem of information. What we have is a misunderstanding or misconstruing of the situation by the CBN such that they have not planned for what are really foreseeable eventualities.
All right, so now, OG, you brought up printing more money. Now, of course, you do have to consider the fact that the CBN is also trying to mop up money. So printing more money and putting that back into circulation, how would that work right now when, you know, the CBN is trying to do one thing, but people are requesting another?
Yeah, I think the CBN governor himself, you know, has actually said that there wasn't enough new cash, new NAIRA notes, right? And that is the reason why we saw in February.
Oh, sorry. Let me just quickly add this. So even printing and minting right now says that they only have capacity to print about 200 billion at once. Exactly. So we do need to also consider the urgent need for cash to be in circulation right now.
Exactly, and that's the reason why the Supreme Court is, you know, going back to say, you know what, you guys can use this old cash again. That's the reason why the president, you know, had to, you know, allow the use of the old 200 notes because the new monies, the new notes, are not as, you know, they're not as well distributed as we would like. Yes. Right? And we could see just before the elections, the week before the elections, people were complaining that a whole very big branch of banks were getting about 30 million naira in new notes. And these are branches that service about 500 million naira regularly, normally. And they're getting, so how are they going to meet those requirements? Right? They'll eventually have to give out the old notes. Right? So this means that the CBN either has to, you know, allow the usage of the old notes eventually and recycle it gradually out of the system, right? Just like when we had to change, this is not the first time we've actually changed the NAIRA. We always changed the NAIRA.
Several times in the
Several times. So why is this different? Why is this different? We've changed the NAIRA like maybe 2-3 times. And it always happened, you know, people didn't even know it was happening. Because whenever you go to the bank to deposit money, they give you a new note. It wasn't something that had a price to it. Right? And this is exactly why, you know, the printing has to come in. And, you know, there are also rumors that, you know, the CBN governor has also said that the new notes have been burned. The old notes had been burned. You know, so that leaves us in a very printing situation. We have to print. So if we're still going to have to meet these requirements. And this is what, you know, I actually mean when I say whether print or bring back the old ones, if we're going to have to, you know, escape the challenges, and it's compounding. The effects of these things are actually compounding because when you create a problem in the economy, it doesn't end there. It actually goes on to hurt the other, you know, areas of economics that actually rely on those, you know, actors. Like the guy who can't survive because he can't transfer money. He goes on to do something else to get cash, and then, you know, it spirals downwards from there.
Right.
All right. We'll take a short break, and when we get back, we'll continue with our discussion. Don't go anywhere.
This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.
You're welcome back to Business Highlights on Trust TV. My name is Chamunda Beng, and I'm here with policy analyst Faiz Mohammed Ali and financial analyst Oji Adoga. We're currently taking a look at the NAIRA redesign policy and the effects that it has had on our economy. Faiz, speaking once again as a policy analyst, what policies are we looking at right now to sort of bring an urgent, resolve to the situation?
I think, like I mentioned earlier, this bridge has already been passed, such that there is no way to simply reverse the scarcity that we're seeing now. It's going to continue for a little more time until such a time when there is enough cash printed in volume to serve the needs of Nigerians in general. However, what the CBN can look to is strengthening and ensuring both financial inclusion and the strength of financial institutions with regards to their online infrastructure. I think this really has been the point at which there has been a missed opportunity, because if the situation were such that Nigerians could be sure that any online transaction that they make would be free of error, or could be free of error to at least 90%, then we would not have seen this level of panic when it comes to the lack of the physical Naira. But long term, what the CBN has ensured, unfortunately, is that there is going to be a general distrust when it comes to not just financial institutions, but online banking in general. We've always been a cash-dependent society. The informal sector is 65% of the economy, and 80% of its labor force depends on cash to transact.
All right, so far as you just brought up the informal sector, 65%. OG, are we looking at, a drop in Nigeria's GDP once we sort of manage to move past this?
Oh, that's a tough one. Production hasn't stopped. Production hasn't stopped, right? What is happening is we're suffering from poor distribution of cash. Right, so whether or not would actually, suffer in terms of GDP would be a question of what will happen, say, the next 2-3 months. It's still very premature to actually tell, right? Because there's still a lot that can actually go right, like because I know everything is going pretty badly right now, but if, say, for example, the next 2-3 months the banking services actually get better, because I actually know about the failures where in payments, and we can actually see people suffering, people sending emails about failed transactions and all of that. But if that gets, a little better, and if it becomes cheaper, because transfer is actually expensive, it's expensive, it becomes cheaper, I think that, producers, right, would begin to, catch up, right? I don't think this would have a huge long-term, dent on our GDP. I don't think so. All
right. So still on the informal sector itself, when we talk the informal sector, we're looking at the same market sellers, the people that are out there in the markets. Mamada is selling,
traders,
exactly, traders. The person selling pepper, the person selling yam, and the rest of them. Of course, many of them do not have banks. They don't have bank accounts. I recently, even up until now, they do not have bank accounts. I remember trying to buy a loaf of bread, and I asked the person selling the bread, do you have a bank account? Let me make a transfer. And he said, no, he's just opening one. So this is the real situation that we're actually facing. So now these traders who cannot sell their pepper because, one, they've already started to distrust the banking system itself. So you offer them a transfer and they say, no, I can't take a transfer because the last 5 people, I didn't get their cash. So is this really not going to affect the economy in one way or the other?
Well, that's why I said it's still very premature. For example, this situation you've actually painted hasn't lasted for more than 3 months. It's actually a new situation, and it could actually be fixed if in the next month transfers start going. Right, so it's still very premature for us to say right now that those people won't have a bank accounts. Right, onboarding into and all the other digital services is actually pretty easy. And just like you also mentioned, there's also a very big group who have actually onboarded into those platforms. Right now, Kekenapep guys have, a lot of them have. And the truth is, the policy, I think it's a good idea, but the implementation is just wrong. So I would like to give the CBN some bonus there, but then again, I would like to have some faith and say, let's see how it goes in 2-3 months. We see what the Supreme Court is doing. We're here to see if the CBN is listening, and if they do listen and maybe drop the ego. I would say ego because it seems like everybody's just trying to uphold their policy.
It's a tussle. Yeah, the CBN, I do understand from the CBN's perspective because they do have to maintain that independence, and they don't want anything to disturb that independence that the CBN has.
So I like to speak for these people at this sort of micro side, but then again, I like to also say, let's see if it works, everything works out.
When it comes to the CBN maintaining its independence, I think if an institution wants to maintain its independence, its policy has to be well thought out enough that it doesn't affect other sectors of the economy. It's inevitable that other branches of the government are going to have their say-so if your policy is affecting everything else.
All right, so Nigerians are hoping that the central bank will listen to its people. Well, we've come to the end of our show for today, and I would like to thank my guests in the studio with me. Thank you so much, financial analyst Oji Adoga and policy analyst Faiz Muhammad Ali. Thank you so much for joining us. And to our viewers out there, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to follow us on our social media platforms. Just look for us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter at Trust TV News. My name is Chamun Dabeng. Come back again. Let's talk numbers.
This program is brought to you in partnership with the Central Bank of Nigeria.